These comments from head coach Darian Devries of Indiana basketball should give the Hoosiers hope.
You are Locked On Hoosiers, your daily podcast on the Indiana Hoosiers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, and it is the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. I'm your man, Jacob Goins. I appreciate you being here, making this your first listen or your first watch every single day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, which is your team every day. We got a loaded show for you today as Indiana has their first 3 football game time announced. We know who they're playing and now when they are playing. Plus, we know a kickoff time and a date for the Purdue game, and it's not what you think. We'll have that for you later on. Plus, Indiana basketball finally getting some love in some preseason rankings, and more on that later, because Darian Devries had some comments the other day at a fundraising event for Indiana Athletics. He was there, Kurt Signetti was there. There were a lot of people at this recruiting event, or not a recruiting, a fundraising event. And Darian Devries had some comments that should get Indiana fans fired up, and I think should concern those who don't cheer for IU. This was an event where DeVries and his assistants were put up on a stage and had a chance to answer questions and talk to big donors and things like that. And unfortunately, I couldn't be there, but there are several quotes and articles and videos and things like that that are out there about what he had to say. And after reading and listening and diving into what he had to say, I'm fired up. I am pumped because Darian DeVries is going to bring a new energy to Indiana basketball. He's going to bring a new feel, a new look, a new sound to this program. And that's at all levels. That is to the team, to the fan base, and to the country. And it's what Indiana needed, right? You hire Mike Woodson after what's been just failed coach after failed coach and just bad endings for several, I was going to say decades, but that's not right, for several different regimes, right? And you hire Mike Woodson thinking, golden boy, we got him. We got a guy who's a legend here. He was beloved by Bob Knight. It just makes sense, right? His NBA career didn't work out, but we're not going to highlight that part. Let's bring in old Mike Woodson and see if he could turn this thing around. Nope, that didn't work. And it fizzled out fairly quickly, and fans got frustrated by more than just not winning on the floor, right? They got frustrated because the Hoosiers couldn't seem to land a big-time recruit, even right here in the state of Indiana. That wasn't happening correctly, right? Fans were getting upset. They were also getting upset by the things that he would say before, during, and after games. There was no energy there. I'm not going to go as far to say as there was no passion from Mike Woodson. I just don't think he had what it takes and what you have to give to be a head coach at a Power 5 college basketball program in today's era. Would Mike Woodson have been good in the 90s and early 2000s? Maybe. There's a high chance of that probably. I just don't think he was built for 2020 and beyond, and even before that, where college basketball and where the game is as a whole. And fans we're getting frustrated with hearing the same thing over and over. Well, we just, we just got to figure some things out. We're just not making good shots, and we're not knocking them down, and we're hurting ourselves, and all the stuff that he used to say. That got old really fast. And this new era has begun, and I think it's off to a really good start for Darian DeVries. You saw him come in. You saw them hit the recruiting trail immediately on the transfer portal. They've already been on the recruiting trail for the high school ranks, and now you've basically got all your assistants finalized. We knew that they were hired and beginning to work, but all of that has been basically finalized as of this week. And all of that are good signs. Those are good signs. That's a good thing. And now he's meeting with big-time fans and big-time donors, and he's got some quotes that really should get you excited. And he talked about in this open kind of a forum here where he talked about a quote that I wrote down was, I want this to look like the hardest playing team out there. I want it to look like they want to be there, that you cannot question their effort and energy on the floor. And some of you may say, well, all the coaches say that. Really? Mike Woodson never said that. Mike Woodson never talked about the passion that his team had. And he talked about IU. He talked about them competing. but he didn't say it like Darian DeVries said it. And DeVries talked about being inside of Assembly Hall and how he wants the fans to be there on any given night and walk out believing that they saw the best version of their team. We didn't see that in recent years. We haven't seen that in the past from Indiana basketball. I believe that Darian DeVries is going to bring that. And I think it's going to come with wins. I think it's going to bring fans to the building. I think it's going to bring wins to the program. And all of those things are how you get better players. That's how you recruit. That's how you build a program. And unfortunately, he has to rebuild a program. He has to completely start over with recruiting and with money, and maybe not with facilities and brand, but with recognition, if nothing else. He's having to start from the bottom. And so when you start talking like that, it's a big deal. But I understand, and there's going to be a lot of you that say this, and I totally agree. Talk can only get you so far. It's great. You can say all the right things. Heck, Woodson did at the start, right? He had a viral clip that talked about Indiana basketball being the you-know-what. That thing went viral, but he couldn't back it up. And that's where DeVries has to be better than the previous however many coaches you want to throw in there, 4, 5, 10, I don't know. That's where DeVries has to be different. And I also like the fact that he talked about them getting on the trail, getting into the homes of these portal players and getting on the phone and going to see recruits and starting to rebuild these relationships. And he talked about playing for Indiana and not the money, which is such a big deal nowadays. Look, these kids want to get paid. They know they can and they know they will. So they're asking about it. But he specifically said, we look for kids whose first question is not, how much are you paying me? Because that's not what you want in your locker room. That's not what you want on the floor. That's not what you want representing IU. And so DeVries went out of his way to say all of these things. And I just feel like his energy and his passion, you're going to see it and hear it every single game. How many times would you see Mike Woodson when Indiana was down, or they let the other team go on a run, or they'd get a bad foul or miss a couple of shots, and it was just stone cold? Nothing. No reaction, no nothing. Sitting on the end of the bench and just watching. Back and forth. Like ping pong, man. Just watching them go up and down the floor. Wouldn't call timeouts. Wouldn't make the correct subs. Wouldn't have any emotion. I don't think DD is going to be that way. I don't think Mr. Dark Knight DeVries is going to act that way. I'm not saying make a butt out of yourself. I'm just saying fight a little bit. Because your team will feed off of that. Your guys will be a direct representative of you. I think that was absolutely the case with Mike Woodson as the head coach of this program. Don't you? Don't you think his team carried the energy that he carried himself with? And I'm not trying to attack Woodson's character or personality or anything like that. I don't know him like that. I'm talking specifically when he stood on the sideline and represented Indiana basketball. That's the picture we got. And I think that's the team that we got. I'm expecting that to be different with Darian DeVries based off of his actions, based off of his comments. And now you've got to do that based off of wins on the floor. Even if it just looks different, even if you just compete this year in your non-conference games against Marquette and Kentucky, you beat Purdue this year. You have a chance in so many games and find a way to win them rather than finding a way to lose them. That would be the difference than what we've seen in years past and what we could see this year. And so all of that is from what I've seen up to this point and now from what I've heard at this point. I'm excited for Darian DeVries, and you should be too for the future of Indiana basketball. All right, coming up here on Locked On Hoosiers, speaking of Indiana basketball, we've talked a lot about the Hoosiers not getting a whole lot of love this preseason, but that may be changing right now. We'll talk about who and we'll talk about why coming up next here on the Locked On Hoosiers podcast. Today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments. Whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player, there's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and during the game itself. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. The NBA Finals are coming up. Be sure you get in on all of that, okay? If you you think, look, the Thunder are good. I know it. If you think SGA is just going to go off every game, jump on FanDuel and make it a little bit more fun. And if you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com right now and place your first $5 bet, because if you do and it wins, they're going to give you $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, second segment, rather. Not the final segment yet. Second segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again for being here and finishing up your week. And hey, finishing up the month of May. How about that? June is coming up this weekend, which is so crazy to think about, and which makes it, you feel like it's the off season, but it's not, because there's still so much to talk about. And that includes Indiana basketball, who we've had some episodes and some conversations over the last couple of weeks about Indiana not getting any love in the preseason. Nobody's addressing the new head coach. Nobody's addressing all the transfer portal players and the three-point shooters and the athleticism and just the brand new look of this Indiana basketball team. Nobody's talking about it. Nobody wants to. I don't think anybody wants to touch it until they see it. Until now. And Andy Katz, who is a basketball reporter. He's a contributor for the NCAA, for the March Madness tournament. He's very well known, K-A-T-Z, Andy Katz. So he's very well known. And he put out his updated Power 37. I have no idea why he does 37, but that's what he does. And this was updated as of Thursday. Is that right? Yeah, as of Thursday, because that was when the NBA draft stuff was done. That's when the deadline was. Believe that was Tuesday night at midnight going into Wednesday. So then he updated it, or was it Wednesday night going into Thursday? Either way, it was as of this week after the NBA draft stuff, okay? So he updated it. And as he should, because several players came back right there at the deadline, especially in the SEC, man. Some big-time names decided to go back and play another year at school. But remember how we talked about John Rothstein, who he keeps updating his top 45, and Indiana's nowhere near it. Andy Katz has something a little bit different. His top 37, not going to read all of these, but working from the bottom up to the top. 37, Kansas State. 36 at Clemson. 35 is Miami. 34 is Ole Miss. Remember Chris Beard down there. 33 is San Diego State. And 32 are your Indiana Hoosiers. So 32nd, not bad. That's fine. I just have been begging and just honestly confused on why Indiana hasn't been getting any love, why they haven't gotten any recognition for what they've been doing over the last couple of months in the transfer portal, hiring a new coach and completely flushing out the old system, the old ways. I was baffled, honestly, that people were not giving any sort of respect to Indiana. But Andy Katz did. He has the Hoosiers at 32. Just to give you some perspective here, North Carolina is at 31, Ohio State's 30, Maryland 29, Creighton 28, Michigan State 27, and Arkansas is 26. So just in this 10 or 11 teams, you've got the Hoosiers, the Buckeyes, the Terps, and the Spartans, all from the Big Ten on this one slide right here. And that pretty much sums up what the Big Ten is going to be this year. It's going to be competitive. It's going to be very, very deep. And I said on a previous show this week, we talked about updated bracketology from Joe Lunardi, who has Indiana as the first four out, along with two other Big Ten teams. I've said, and I think it could come to fruition here, that the Big Ten could be the best conference in college basketball this year, not the SEC. I know they broke a record last year. I think the Big Ten could flirt with that this year. I think the Big Ten is going to be deeper than the SEC. And most experts are predicting the top of the Big Ten to be better than the top of the SEC. I still have to see that from teams like Purdue and UCLA and Michigan and things like that. But I do think there will be some good teams. But I think the middle of this conference is going to be a rock fight. And if you flash back to a year ago, we talked about with that Indiana team how you didn't want to be in the middle because the middle of the pack in the Big Ten it's carnage. It's a disaster because all the teams just beat up on each other and nobody can pull ahead. Nobody can earn a better seed in the Big Ten tournament. And it's really, really hard to earn a better seed in the NCAA tournament if you are considered and based off of your results, a middle of the pack team. I mean, just off of this, I said there's 4 of them right here between 26 and 37. I look at 25 through 14. USC's in there. Wisconsin's in there. Illinois, UCLA. There's 4 more ahead of you before you even get to the top 13. The Big Ten's going to be legit. I'm just happy and I'm proud and I'm shouting out Andy Katz for giving Indiana the credit they deserve, for understanding Mike Woodson's gone, those coaches are gone, that regime is over. Indiana's reputation has to have a clean slate here. And hopefully you, as an Indiana fan, are going into the season that way. Hopefully people in my business are going in to that season that way, media and journalists and radio and television and podcasters and all that. Hopefully everybody like us is going into the season with a clean slate. And hopefully the entire college basketball world is going into the season with a clean slate for the Indiana Hoosiers, because players like Reed Bailey and Lamar Wilkerson and those guys, like, you've got some serious talent on this team. And I look at our 3-point shooters, like even a Connor Enright who comes in from DePaul, who's going to be an incredible role player. And Nick Dorn comes in as well. I mean, you have dudes on this team. Plus your high school recruit, Trent Sisley, who's coming in, who I think could quietly end up finding himself a pretty good role on this squad as a freshman as well. I just don't see how you can't at least sprinkle a little on the Indiana Hoosiers. Remember I told you the other day on FanDuel, we're like top, like tied for 25th in national title odds? That's not bad, right? That's not a terrible bet if you're out there looking to get a part of that. I just think that the Hoosiers have to get off to a good start. I think especially in Big Ten play, you got to get off to a good start and just survive. Just survive this year, man. That's all we're asking for. Win the games that you're supposed to, especially in non-conference play. Maybe get one of those you're not supposed to in non-conference play, like Marquette or Kentucky, and then start taking some games in the Big Ten. Get your home games done. I think it's significantly easier on the road or at home for the Hoosiers than going on the road. I know. I'm talking about just from the straight up opponent perspective. I think you have easier home games than you do road games, but then go on the road and get a couple. We saw Indiana do it last year. Heck, they got games they were not supposed to get a year ago, but they dropped games they weren't supposed to either. Heck, that's what got Mike Woodson fired. That's what got him fired, was losing games to Northwestern and bad Ohio State teams. Like, that's what got him canned, because he got some upsets in there, but you just gotta fix all of that. And I'm saying all of this because the Big Ten's going to be hard to do that in. But I believe in Darian Devries. I believe his team will play hard. I believe that they're going to score. I believe they're going to run. I believe they are going to tire some folks out this year on the hardwood. And I can't wait. I'm itching for any sort of Indiana basketball. And the good news is, coming up on Monday, the start of next week, the team reports. They get together. They begin to work out as a team. And that should get you fired up for the season. His comment should, this team should, and the fact that everything gets going next week, that's a big deal. And the Hoosiers, slowly but surely, are starting to get some attention from those in the media. And maybe they'll just start to respect the Hoosiers by the time the season starts. All right, coming up in our final segment on Locked On Hoosiers, going to flip over to football because the first 3 game times have been announced, plus Indiana and Purdue on a day that it's never been before. We'll have that for you in our final segment here on Locked On Hoosiers. Final segment on Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you again so much for being here. Whether you are watching on the YouTube side or listening on an audio podcasting platform like Spotify, Amazon, Apple, thank you so much for supporting the show. However you're finding it and however you're supporting, I really do appreciate you. And if you are watching on YouTube with the video version, be sure that you like the videos. That helps them get out there, tells YouTube that it's good, and that hopefully other people can find it. Also, leave your thoughts in the YouTube comments, your thoughts on the kickoff time times that we're about to talk about, or Indiana finally being in some preseason polls, or the comments from head coach Darian Devries. Any of those things, drop your thoughts in the YouTube comments and then subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 5,800. And so if you could do that and help us get there, that'd be a really big deal. And then for those of you who listen on audio, just really quickly, follow us there, turn on your notifications, and I ask you to send it to somebody that you haven't sent it to before or who doesn't already listen to the show, okay? Helps us grow. We want more fans being here and a part of Locked On Hoosiers. All right, so Indiana football, along with pretty much every other team across the country in Power 4 schools, we now know the first 3 game times for the upcoming football season. And I've talked about this in the past, and I'm going to say it again. The start of the football season for Indiana in terms of the scheduling sucks. It does. I'm going to lay it out there for you how I feel. Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, and Indiana State. I'm sorry. Those games don't get me excited in terms of what the opponent is. No disrespect to those teams whatsoever. Indiana still needs to show up, play 4 quarters, and not mess around with any of those guys, okay? But from a fan perspective and from an entertainment perspective and a hype perspective, it's going to be tough. It is. It's going to be tough, and especially since your first game against Old Dominion on August 30th is going to be on an afternoon, right, at 2:30 that afternoon. Then you're going to play Kennesaw State, right? That's coming up in in September. That is on September 6th. That Saturday is a noon kickoff there at Memorial Stadium. And then September 12th, just remember, that's a Friday game, okay? That's a Friday night against Indiana State. That's going to be at either 6:30 or 7. It'll be at night under the lights. And so that'll be the first chance to have a night game at home for Indiana. And look, you're hoping you're 2-0. You can just roll over Indiana State. Hopefully, you can't assume anything. I know, and I'm not trying to do that, but I just wish one of these games wasn't on the schedule. I'm not talking about any team in particular. I'm just saying I wish one of these games wasn't here. I wish it was a better non-conference game. I wish you were playing a team from the SEC or the Big 12 or the ACC, at least a game to get excited for, a game to build your resume a little bit. But we talked about this on the Big 10 squad. If you missed it yesterday, go check it out, where the college football playoff encourages you not to do it. Some of our Locked On Big 10 buddies have given me crap for the schedule, but it's like, what do you want Indiana to do? You don't get rewarded for it, but you do get punished if you lose. So why would you go out of your way to play those games, right? You play these 3 games, you go 3-0. I don't think it's beneficial for the team. Not 3 of them anyway. 1 or 2, sure. Yeah, work out the kinks, get in there, figure out your true 2 deep, figure out who you can go to if somebody goes down or if somebody doesn't work out. I get all of that. You don't have to explain it to me. But 3 of them back to back to back, that doesn't do you any good. It doesn't. Take the Kennesaw State one out of there. It's in the middle. You got an afternoon game to start, a Friday night game, which I don't love, but it is what it is. Friday night game against Indiana State, and then you get ready to start your Big 10 play against Illinois. Fine by me. I would be cool with that, but it is what it is, and maybe scheduling will change with an expanded college football playoff, or maybe with expanded conferences or conjoined conferences or whatever the heck is going to happen with the future of college football. But again, Old Dominion on August 30th will be a 2:30 kick that Saturday afternoon. Again, all of these are home games. Kennesaw State on September 6th at noon, and then Friday night, September 12th against Indiana State, either 6:30 or 7. It will be under the lights. But I think what the biggest piece of news is, with the schedule, Indiana and Purdue, for the 100th time in the history of this rivalry, is playing, yes, this year, but for the first time in the rivalry, will be meeting on Black Friday. That's right. They're going to be playing on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving. That is going to be on November 28th under the lights at Purdue. And so the old Oaken Bucket is going to be played for the 100th time, but now on Black Friday for the first time. And I understand there's probably going to be some uproar about this. There's probably going to be some folks who are not super pleased with it, but I'll be really honest with you. I kind of like it. Old Dominion, it was Indiana State, the other Friday night game. I don't care about that one, but I don't care about it being on a Friday. Sorry, let me clarify. This one, though, it's kind of cool. The whole nation will be watching, and hopefully Purdue's terrible like they were a year ago, and we can go to their house and get the 100th one and get to dominate like we did a year ago, 66-0. And so I think it's cool. Do I like it being on Rivalry Saturday? Sure. But this gives you a chance to be on national TV. This is going to be on NBC. That's why it was announced so early, because NBC claimed it and they're going to be the ones to broadcast it. So again, Friday, November 28th, that's Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving, Hoosiers and Boilermakers, 7:30 Eastern time, 6:30 Central time is the kickoff for that. And so, again, that is on the road. So Hoosiers have a lot of ground to make up in the all-time series, but we took care of business last year. So hoping to do that again this year. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Hoosiers. Thank you so much again for being here. It's been a great week. It's been a great month of shows, and we're looking forward to another exciting month in June. A lot of recruiting things coming up for football and for basketball, so this is where you want to be. We're going to talk about them all, break them all down, and hopefully talk about some commits for Signetti and for DeVries, okay? We are back on Monday, so have a fantastic weekend. We're back for another episode then. So until then, Hoosier fans, stay safe, and I'll talk to you later.